Welcome, curious learners, to the Deep Dive. Today we're embarking on a journey into something truly profound, something ancient, yet incredibly relevant for understanding our modern world.
Yeah, definitely.
Imagine, if you will, a master key. Not just any key, but one whispered about for millennia, carefully guarded, in the shadows of ancient wisdom.
Right. A key that promises to unlock not merely hidden secrets, but something deeper, a more fundamental understanding of reality itself.
Exactly. A way to reconcile those seemingly contradictory bits of knowledge you've picked up along your own path, leading to those really satisfying aha moments you've been chasing.
It's less about piling on more information and, well, more about gaining a foundational framework. Think of it almost as the ultimate shortcut to being truly well-informed, providing clarity, coherence, without that feeling of being overwhelmed by it all.
Right, information overload. We don't need more of that.
No, we're talking about a philosophical structure that offers a coherent way to understand the universe and, importantly, your inherent place within it.
That's it. Our mission today is to place this very master key squarely in your hands. We're taking a deep dive into the Kybalion, a remarkable work published back in 1908.
1908, yeah. Attributed to the enigmatic three initiates.
But make no mistake, while it appeared relatively recently, this isn't just a book written a century ago, is it?
Not according to the text itself. It's presented as a direct conduit, like a channel, to the Hermetic philosophy of ancient Egypt and Greece.
A wisdom tradition whose roots stretch way, way back, dawn of recorded history stuff.
And supposedly profoundly influencing countless esoteric traditions ever since. It's about providing you with that underlying truth, that connecting thread that makes sense of everything.
From the smallest subatomic particle to, well, the grandest cosmic movements.
Exactly. And critically, how it all applies to your own mind and your own experience. So prepare to see the world, and maybe your own internal landscape, in a whole new, deeply interconnected light.
Okay, let's unpack this incredible source material. Our first segment is all about unveiling this ancient wisdom. So to begin, what exactly is the Kybalion in the context of this whole tradition?
Well, the authors themselves, the three initiates, they're pretty explicit about its purpose. They say it's not some new philosophy they've invented or a novel revelation.
Not their own ideas, then.
No. They present it as a study of the Hermetic philosophy, a compilation, really, of world-old teachings from ancient Egypt and Greece that they claim had been preserved from lip to ear over thousands of years.
Wow, lip to ear. That implies a very careful, very personal transmission of knowledge.
It does. You could almost think of it as a kind of Rosetta Stone for understanding deeper esoteric knowledge. You try to gather and present these foundational principles that allow you, the student, to interpret and synthesize lots of seemingly disparate or conflicting occult and spiritual teachings you might encounter.
And that's really the key, isn't it? That unifying framework idea. We often encounter scattered spiritual concepts, bits of esoteric wisdom, maybe from different traditions, and they can feel disconnected, even contradictory sometimes.
Right, and the Kybalion claims to provide that master key to open many inner doors in the Temple of Mystery, doors that students might have already entered, maybe through meditation or other studies, but struggle to navigate.
Because they lacked the map, the underlying structure.
Precisely. It's designed to reconcile those divergent occult views, showing how they might fit into a larger, more coherent system. It suggests that all these scattered truths are maybe just fragments of a greater underlying unity.
What's also fascinating, you mentioned the three initiates. They don't claim ownership of the ideas themselves.
No, not at all. They position themselves as mere conduits, compilers maybe, presenting ancient, unwritten precepts passed down through generations. Their stated aim is to provide an interpretive lens, a set of principles that help you make sense of existing knowledge, rather than just adding more new concepts to the pile.
Revealing the fundamental laws governing existence, then.
That's the idea.
And at the very heart of this ancient tradition, forming its cornerstone, is this incredibly influential, almost legendary figure, Hermes Trismegistus. He's mentioned right at the start of the Kybalion, isn't he, as the ultimate source?
Yes, he's absolutely central, revered as the Master of Masters. Many ancient texts referred him with these incredible titles like the Great Great, the Scribe of the Gods, and the most famous one, Thrice Great, which is what Trismegistus means.
Thrice Great. Wow.
This enigmatic figure is said to have lived in the earliest days of Egypt, in an epoch so remote it barely registers in our standard historical records. Some traditions even claim he was a contemporary, maybe even an instructor to Abraham.
Really?
Yeah.
Abraham. That would make him a bridge figure between incredibly ancient wisdom and later spiritual lineages, wouldn't it?
It certainly places him incredibly early. So he's more than just a historical figure. He's practically a mythic progenitor, the wellspring of certain lines of thought.
So what kind of impact did he have to earn that kind of veneration? Master of masters.
Well, his legacy, according to these Hermetic texts, is monumental. Hermes is considered the father of occult wisdom, the founder of astrology, and the discoverer of alchemy.
The big three right there.
Pretty much. But beyond those specific fields, his teachings are described as the fundamental, basic doctrines embedded in the esoteric traditions of every race and culture, even extending to ancient India, they claim.
Every culture. That's a huge claim.
It is. It positions his teachings as the universal source code, if you like. His influence was apparently so profound that the Egyptians later deified him as Thoth, their god of wisdom and writing.
Thoth, right, the ibis-headed god.
And the ancient Greeks revered him as Hermes, their own god of wisdom and communication, the messenger god. Essentially, if you trace back the roots of mystical thought, the Hermeticists suggest nearly all paths in some form ultimately lead back to Hermes. He's the fount.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because his name, Hermes, gave us a word we still use today, hermetic, meaning secret or sealed.
Exactly. Hermetically sealed.
So why? Why was this wisdom kept so under wraps for millennia if it was so fundamental? Why not share it openly?
That's a crucial question, and it speaks to the very heart of the Hermetic tradition. The followers of Hermes always adhered to a strict principle of secrecy. Their core maxim was, and remains, the limbs of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding.
The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding. Powerful, but does that imply elitism?
Well, the Kybalion argues, no, it wasn't about selfishness or elitism, as some might assume. It was rooted in wisdom and a pragmatic understanding of, well, human nature and historical realities. Firstly, it was to avoid persecution.
Ah, right. Dangerous times for unconventional thinking.
Especially in certain periods. Medieval theologians in particular were often hostile to any spiritual or philosophical paths that didn't align perfectly with their dogma. The Kybalion talks about them fighting the secret doctrine with fire and sword, stake, gibbet, and cross. Sharing these profound truths openly could literally get you killed.
So it was self-preservation, but also preserving the teachings themselves.
Exactly. Protecting the truth itself, ensuring it wouldn't be corrupted or misused by those not ready to comprehend and master it. It's like giving advanced calculus to someone who hasn't grasped basic addition. It wouldn't just be useless, it could be actively harmful or lead to serious misunderstandings.
That makes sense, giving power without the wisdom to wield it.
Precisely. The Kybalion explicitly contrasts this protective policy with other ancient occult traditions, like those found in India, Persia, Gnosticism, or early Christianity. It argues that when those traditions mixed their profound truths with theological dogma, or tried to spread them indiscriminately among the masses,
They got diluted.
they often degenerated, yes, into religious superstition, cults, creeds, and gods. Their original wisdom became obscured, misconstrued, sometimes even weaponized. The Hermetic truths, however, supposedly remain pure and unadulterated because they were meticulously passed directly from master to student, from initiate to hierophant, from lip to ear.
That direct personal transmission again?
Yes. And when these teachings were eventually written down, their meaning was purposefully veiled in terms of alchemy and astrology.
Ah, okay, so the writings weren't straightforward.
No, they were intentionally obscure. It meant that only those with the proper key, those already initiated into the underlying principles, could truly understand the deeper meaning. Others would just see a literal, maybe even nonsensical interpretation, protecting the core truth from misapplication or persecution.
A built-in security system. So if it was often veiled in alchemy, what about the common perception of alchemy, turning lead into actual physical gold? Was that just the cover story, a brilliant distraction?
Precisely. That's a common, and you could say quite brilliant, misconception or maybe deliberate misdirection. The true Hermetic alchemy, according to the Kybalion, was not about transmuting base physical metals into gold.
Not literal transmutation.
No, that was the exoteric understanding, the surface-level story, perhaps to appease rulers or those seeking only material gain. Its real focus was far more profound. It was about the mastery of mental forces. It was about the transmutation of one kind of mental vibrations into others.
Ah, mental transmutation, transforming your own mind.
Exactly. So the legendary Philosopher's Stone, that elusive substance or object, capable of such extraordinary transformation.
Wasn't the stone at all.
It was, in essence, an allegory for this internal mental mastery, a potent symbol readily understood by true Hermetic students. It didn't represent a physical object to turn lead into gold, but rather the internal spiritual and mental power to transform one's own lower mental states like fear, ignorance, greed, those base metals of the psyche, into higher, more refined states of consciousness, symbolized by pure gold.
Transforming your inner lead into mental gold. That's powerful.
It really reframes the whole thing. And the Kybalion, with its foundational maxims, axioms, and precepts, along with detailed explanations, aims to make these once-failed teachings accessible to the modern student, to help you grasp what that gold really meant for your own life, your own potential.
That's a massive, truly transformative shift in perspective right there. Understanding that instantly redefines what alchemy truly represents. And this leads us perfectly into our next segment, which introduces what truly is that master key, an overview of the 7 Hermetic Principles.
Yes, these principles are the absolute bedrock of the entire Hermetic philosophy. They offer a coherent, universal framework that applies supposedly to all planes of existence, from the highest spiritual realms right down to the densest matter.
The operating system of the universe, maybe.
You could think of it like that. The Kybalion states it very clearly and powerfully. The principles of truth are 7. He who knows these, understandingly, possesses the magic key before whose touch all the doors of the temple fly open. They are presented as the foundational laws of the universe, operating with unwavering precision.
So understanding these 7 principles, understandingly, as it says, that's the key, not just knowing their names.
Understandingly is the crucial word. It's about grasping their interplay and how to apply them.
Okay, so let's lay them out. Think of these as the fundamental laws operating everywhere, from the cosmic to the atomic. We'll briefly introduce them now, giving you a map of where we're going, and then we'll dive deep into each one, exploring their profound implications. The first, and arguably the most foundational, is
the principle of mentalism. And the axiom is, the all is mind, the universe is mental.
Right. We'll unpack that one first, then the second principle.
The principle of correspondence, known by the famous phrase, as above, so below, as below, so above.
Classic. Okay, number 3.
The principle of vibration, which states, nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates.
Makes sense. Aligns with modern physics in a way.
Next up, the principle of polarity, the idea that everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites.
Okay, duality. Principle number 5.
The principle of rhythm. This one says, everything flows out and in, everything has its tides, all things rise and fall. The universal pendulum swing.
The ebb and flow. Got it. And number 6, a principle many people grapple with.
The principle of cause and effect. Simply put, every cause has its effect, every effect has its cause, everything happens according to law. No accidents.
Right. No room for chance in this system. And finally, number 7.
The principle of gender. And this one needs careful handling, as we'll see. The axiom is, gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes.
7 profound principles right there. Each one a door. And together, potentially, a master key. Now let's begin our deep dive into each, starting with the very first, the foundation upon which all the others seem to rest. Principle I am mentalism.
Yes, the all is mind. The universe is mental. This is the core revelation, the foundational truth that absolutely permeates Hermetic philosophy. It states that the ultimate reality underlying all outward manifestations, everything we perceive as matter, energy, life phenomena, even what we sometimes call spirit, is actually a universal, infinite living mind.
An infinite living mind. So not just consciousness, but mind as the actual substance of reality.
That's the core assertion. A mind so vast and omnipresent that it is everything, the entire phenomenal world, everything you experience with your senses, every thought you think, every distant galaxy is essentially a mental creation of the all.
Wow. So we literally live and move and have our being within this infinite mind. That's a huge concept to wrap your head around. Our very existence is taking place within a consciousness.
It truly is transformative if you really sit with it. But understanding this fundamentally shifts how you perceive reality and, crucially, your place within it. Think about it. If the universe is fundamentally mental, then mental laws must be the supreme laws.
Ah, so mind over matter isn't just a saying, it's a description of reality.
From this perspective, yes. This is the key, they argue, to understanding all mental and psychic phenomena that often defy conventional scientific explanation. Things like telepathy, intuition, synchronicity, maybe even the power of belief in healing or placebo effects.
Things that science struggles to quantify.
Exactly. By grasping this principle, you're empowered, potentially, to apply these mental laws intelligently in your own life. You're not just seen as a physical being in a material world. You are a spark, a thought perhaps, within an infinite mind. And your own mind holds immense, often untapped power. It elevates your understanding of cause and effect to a whole new mental level.
Okay, let's try to explore this idea of the all. It sounds almost impossible to define. How do the Hermetists describe it, if it's so fundamental and all-encompassing?
Well, they describe the all as the substantial reality behind all the change, flux, and impermanence we see in the universe. It's the unchanging background against which change happens.
The ultimate isness.
Kind of. It's described as infinite in both time and space, meaning it's eternal and omnipresent. It's absolute, possessing unlimited power, and immutable, meaning its fundamental nature doesn't change. It's the source and the substance of everything, yet ultimately beyond definition by the things it creates.
But if it's so vast, so fundamental, and truly all, can we as finite human beings even really conceive of it? Can we comprehend its inner nature?
The Kybalion is very clear on this. The inner nature of the all is unknowable, completely beyond our finite comprehension. Any attempts by theologians or metaphysicians to ascribe personality, human emotions like jealousy or desire for worship, or specific limited desires to it.
Like making God in man's image.
Essentially, yes.
Right.
These are dismissed as childish efforts of mortal minds. They argue such efforts are futile because only the all itself could possibly comprehend its own nature. Our finite minds, designed to operate within the mental universe, simply cannot fully grasp the mind that created the universe. It's like a character in your dream trying to fully understand you, the dreamer.
So there's a profound distinction here between maybe experiencing a connection to the all intuitively and trying to intellectually define it.
Yes, a very clear and critical distinction. The Kybalion distinguishes religion from theology in this way. Religion is described as the intuitional realization of the existence of the all and one's relationship to it, a direct knowing, a feeling, an experience.
An inner sense.
Right. Theology, on the other hand, is seen as the human attempt to define, personify, and mediate the all through doctrines, dogmas, and rituals, trying to put limits on the limitless.
And philosophy versus metaphysics.
Similarly, philosophy is the inquiry into knowable things, using reason and observation within the universe. Metaphysics, in this view, is the often futile attempt to inquire beyond the knowable, to grasp the nature of the all itself through intellect alone. From the Hermetic perspective, true religion and philosophy are rooted in reality and inquiry, while theology and metaphysics often become broken reeds resting on quicksands of ignorance, leading to endless debates because they try to define the undefinable.
That's a powerful clarification. Now, back to the creation part. If the all is mind, how does this all create a mental universe? If there's nothing outside it, no external materials to work with, how can it create anything at all?
This is where the profound simplicity, or maybe elegance, of mentalism shines. Since there's nothing outside the all from which to create, and it cannot divide or subtract from itself.
Because it's already all there is.
Exactly. It must create mentally, akin to how your human mind creates mental images, dreams, or scenarios. Your mental universe, your imaginings, is finite, bounded by your consciousness. But the all's mental universe is infinite. The kind of creation, however, is similar in nature, just vastly different in scale and power.
Like a fractal pattern, the process is similar at different scales.
That's a good analogy. The Kybalion illustrates this quite poetically, stating, "The all creates in its infinite mind countless universes, which exist for eons of time, and yet to the all the creation, development, decline, and death of a million universes is as the time of the twinkling of an eye."
Wow. A million universes, like a fleeting thought.
It suggests an ongoing, effortless mental emanation. A thought, or perhaps a complex dream, made manifest on a cosmic scale.
So in this vast mental creation, does the all also manifest gender, like the principle of gender we mentioned earlier? Does it have masculine and feminine aspects even within itself as the creator?
Yes, it does. And this is presented as a key insight into the creative process itself. On the mental plane, the all manifests both masculine and feminine aspects. Importantly, these are not separate entities, but two indispensable poles of its unified being working together.
Like the positive and negative poles of a battery are needed for current to flow.
Good analogy. The masculine principle, which you might conceptually think of as the will, or maybe God the Father in some traditions, projects the thought, the intention, the blueprint. It provides the initial impulse, the seed.
The directing force.
Yes. And the feminine principle, akin perhaps to nature or the universal mother, then receives that projection, gestates it, and begins the actual work of evolving and manifesting the universe according to that will. It nurtures the creation from potential into reality.
So the masculine initiates, and the feminine brings forth and develops. A dynamic, complementary interplay at the very heart of existence.
That's the model presented. A necessary polarity for creation to occur, even within the mind of the all.
And it sounds like this creative dynamic, this father-mother mind process, echoes within us, too. That we have the same internal dynamic operating in our own minds.
Absolutely, through the principle of self-correspondence, which ties into the next principle we'll discuss. Just as your I, your conscious will, witnesses the creation of mental images in your me, your subconscious receptive mind, so the all, in a sense, observes its own infinite mental universe unfolding.
Our own inner masculine and feminine at work.
Yes, this analogy provides deep insight into your own father-mother mind, where your conscious will, masculine, can direct and plant seeds in the fertile ground of your subconscious, feminine, to create your own mental reality, your habits, your beliefs.
And there's a sense of security in that, being part of this mind.
The Kybalion suggests immense comfort and security. You are always safe and protected within this vast, inherently intelligent father-mother mind. From this perspective, death is not seen as an end, but merely birth to a new life, a transition to a new phase of existence, a different level of consciousness within this infinite mind. The teaching suggests you will continue to evolve through countless planes, eventually, and that this is the ultimate trajectory, becoming at one with the all, again, re-emerging with the source from which you emanated, but enriched by the journey.
That's a vast perspective on life and death. But if the universe is just a mental creation, does that mean it's not real? Is it all just an illusion? This seems to be where many spiritual teachings diverge, leading to what the Kybalion calls the divine paradox.
Indeed, this is a really profound point, and one where many half-wise individuals, as the Kybalion rather bluntly calls them, fall into a significant trap. They hear, the universe is mental, and conclude it must be unreal, a mere illusion they can simply ignore or defy.
Like thinking you can walk through walls because they're just mental.
Exactly. They act like sleepwalkers or madmen, attempting to violate natural laws based on this incomplete understanding, and they are inevitably broken against the rocks by the very laws they deny. The Kybalion offers a stern warning against this kind of presumptuous denial.
So what's the balanced Hermetic view of this paradox? How do you reconcile its ultimate illusory nature with its undeniable everyday reality?
The balanced view holds both truths simultaneously. From the absolute viewpoint, the all's perspective, the universe is akin to an illusion, a grand dream unfolding within its infinite consciousness. But from the relative viewpoint, our finite minds operating within this mental creation, it is very real indeed and must be so considered and treated.
So relative truth versus absolute truth.
Yes. The Hermetic warning, often quoted, is really potent here. Keep your mind ever on the star, the ultimate truth. But let your eyes watch over your footsteps, lest you fall into the mire by reason of your upward gaze. Remember the divine paradox, that while the universe is not from the absolute view, still it is from the relative view. It's real enough for us to interact with it, learn from it, suffer consequences within it, and be affected by its laws.
So the practical application isn't denial, but intelligent engagement. Understanding the rules of the game even while knowing it's a game.
Exactly. We must act as if the universe is real on its own terms, understanding its mental laws and using them wisely for upward progress, for evolution. These laws are described as iron laws, precise, consistent, and unwavering, even if they are fundamentally mental in origin. Ignoring them have consequences.
So understanding mentalism doesn't mean you can ignore gravity.
Not at all. But it does empower you profoundly. It allows you, potentially, to use law against laws, the higher against the lower, and by the art of alchemy transmute that which is undesirable into that which is worthy. This isn't denial of reality, it's intelligent transmutation. Leveraging higher mental laws, like focus, will, polarity shifts, to transform lower manifestations, like negative habits or emotional states.
Okay. Using higher laws to influence lower ones, that makes much more sense than just trying to wish things away. It shifts from passive denial to active, informed participation. And this leads to another core Hermetic teaching mentioned in the outline, the all in all, the idea of immanence.
Yes, this is a powerful dual truth, a corollary to mentalism. While all is in the all, meaning everything exists within the infinite mind, It is equally true that the all is in all, meaning the infinite mind is also within everything.
So the all isn't just the container, it's also in the contents.
Precisely. It means that the all is immanent in, remaining within, inherent in its universe and every single part of it, from a galaxy down to a grain of sand, down to an atom. It's not just a detached creator watching from afar.
Like the author being present within their characters.
That's the analogy the Kybalion uses. Think of Shakespeare's characters, like Othello or Hamlet. They exist solely within Shakespeare's mind. They are his mental creations. Yet Shakespeare's own spirit, his creative essence, is immanent within them, giving them life, vitality, distinct personalities. They are part of him, yet obviously Hamlet is not all of Shakespeare.
So the all isn't just an external creator. It's interwoven with every atom, every thought, every living being in existence.
That's the concept. The Kybalion uses the example of an earthworm. The all is in the earthworm, yet the earthworm is obviously not the all. This highlights the mystery in the hierarchy of being. Every part contains the whole in potential, but the part is not the entirety of the whole.
And understanding this immanence, this God within idea, is key to spiritual growth.
Yes, it's seen as the path to true spiritual development, which they define as the recognition, realization, and manifestation of the spirit within us. It's about waking up to that divine spark, that fragment of the all that resides within your own being.
And this immanence ties into the entire cosmic creative cycle, what the Hermetists call involution and evolution. Can you explain that?
Yes, it describes the grand cosmic breath, the rhythm of creation. The cycle involves an outpouring, or involution, where the all's vibration progressively lowers and condenses, becoming involved in creation, manifesting down to the densest forms of matter. This is like the outbreathing of Brahm in some Eastern tradition, spirit becoming matter.
The descent.
Right. Then an indrawing, or evolution, begins the return swing. This involves individualization, where what was once undifferentiated energy or consciousness begins its journey back towards the source, evolving through mineral, plant, animal, human, and higher states, returning as countless highly developed units of life.
The ascent. Matter evolving back into spirit, but changed by the experience.
Enriched by the experience, yes. It's a vast journey from spirit descending into matter to gather experience, and then matter evolving back into spirit, carrying the wisdom gained. Every being, every entity is seen as being on this immense evolutionary path back to the source, back to the all.
This all brings up the ultimate question, one that has puzzled philosophers for millennia, a question so fundamental it almost defies asking, why? Why does the all create universes in the first place? What does the Kybalion say about that profound mystery?
It acknowledges this as the great mystery of why, and it meticulously dismisses all the common anthropomorphic or childish explanations we tend to project onto it.
Like God was lonely or bored or needed worshipers.
Exactly. Things like the all creating for gain or out of love, as humans understand it, or for pleasure, or due to loneliness, or even out of some kind of compulsion. These are all dismissed as puerile, inadequate projections of finite understanding onto the infinite.
So what is the answer then?
The Kybalion states the answer is unthinkable, for the finite mind, utterly locked within the all's inner self. It suggests that even Hermes himself remained silent when asked this ultimate question, perhaps believing his students lacked the understanding, the mental capacity to receive such a profound teaching at that time.
So on this point, the lips of Hermes are closed regarding it.
That's the phrase used. It emphasizes that there are some truths so fundamental, so far beyond our current scale of comprehension, that accepting that limitation is actually a form of wisdom in itself. Some mysteries remain mysteries from our perspective.
Which simply reemphasizes that perhaps not all truths are meant for all ears at all times, and some things are simply beyond our current capacity to grasp. It's truly a mystery that invites a certain humility. And that profound mystery takes us quite fluidly to our second principle, correspondence.
Ah, yes. Principle 2, correspondence, summed up in that incredibly famous axiom. As above, so below, as below, so above.
Probably the most quoted Hermetic principle out there.
It is, and for good reason. It's presented as the great unifying principle, revealing a fundamental harmony, an agreement, a consistent pattern echoing between all the different planes of manifestation, life, and being. It implies that the same fundamental laws and principles operate at every level of reality.
So it's all about patterns and echoes, meaning the same laws apply whether you're looking at a galaxy, a solar system, a human society, or even an individual atom. It suggests a grand, unified, interconnected system, doesn't it?
Exactly. The idea is that since everything emanates from the same source, the all. Everything must be governed by the same overarching laws and reflect the same underlying patterns. This axiom is described as a powerful mental instrument, truly a master key in itself,
How so? How is it an instrument?
because it allows you to pry aside the obstacles which hid from view the unknown. It enables you to reason intelligently from the known to the unknown. If you understand a principle operating on one level, you can infer its operation on other levels you can't directly observe.
Like studying something small to understand something vast.
Yes. The Kybalion boldly states, studying the monad a single unit, like an atom, he understands the archangel. It's like having a universal template, a fractal pattern that applies at every scale of existence, a powerful tool for analogical reasoning.
That's a very powerful tool for understanding, indeed. And to help us apply this principle, the Hermetic philosophy conceptually divides the universe into three great planes. What are those again?
They are 1. The great physical plane, 2. The great mental plane, and 3. The great spiritual plane. But it's really vital to remember as we discuss with the divine paradox and the nature of reality.
These aren't separate places you can book a flight to?
Exactly. They are conceptual, perhaps somewhat arbitrary, divisions made for human study and comprehension, rather than distinct, walled-off compartments of reality. In truth, they are seen as seamlessly interconnected, representing ascending degrees of the great scale of life, continuously shading into each other like the colors in a rainbow merging one into the next. There are no hard and fast boundaries.
So what exactly is a plane in this Hermetic context? If not a location, what is it?
That's a key clarification. A plane is not a physical place, nor is it an ordinary dimension of space, like length, breadth, or height. A plane, according to the Kybalion, should be understood primarily as a degree of measurement on the scale of vibrations.
Vibration again. So planes are about different frequencies.
Precisely. This is the key fourth dimension for Hermeticists, the dimension of vibration. Think of it like different frequencies on a radio dial. You're in the same room, you haven't gone anywhere, but by tuning your dial, you access entirely different broadcasts, different realities, different sets of information, different phenomena coexisting in the same space, but on different vibrational levels.
So the higher the rate of vibration.
The higher the plane, and the more subtle and refined the manifestation of life or substance occupying that plane. Everything is vibrating, constantly. These planes simply represent different bandwidths, different octaves of that universal vibration.
That radio analogy really helps visualize it. Okay, so let's start with the first one, the great physical plane. What does that encompass in the Hermetic view? It must be more than just solids, liquids, and gases.
Oh, definitely. This plane includes all that relates to physics as we generally understand it, material things, forces, and the grosser manifestations of reality. But it's further subdivided into 7 minor planes, each with 7 subplanes representing increasing degrees of subtlety.
Okay, layers within layers.
Yes. The Kybalion categorizes these broadly as different forms of matter, something called ethereal substance, and various levels of energy. So starting with matter, you have the familiar divisions, A, B, C, solids, liquids, and gases.
Standard stuff.
But then it goes further into more subtle forms, things like what was then called radiant matter. Think of radioactive elements like radium, which were relatively new discoveries back in 1908. And then even more tenuous, subtle forms of matter, still largely unknown or unclassified by ordinary science today.
Beyond our current instruments, perhaps.
Perhaps. Then there's what they term ethereal substance. This corresponds roughly to what early modern science called the ether, the luminiferous ether.
The medium light was thought to travel through.
Exactly. The Hermetists didn't see space as empty, but filled with this highly subtle, extremely tenuous, and elastic medium. It pervades all space, acting as the universal transmitting medium for energy like light, heat, electricity, and so on. Crucially, they taught there are actually 7 ethers, not just one, each vibrating at different rates. This ethereal substance acts as a vital, invisible connecting link between gross matter and dynamic energy.
Okay, so matter and ether. What about energy on the physical plane?
Energy is also divided into levels, A, B, C. Energy A includes the familiar forms, heat, light, magnetism, electricity, and various types of attraction like gravitation, cohesion, what holds matter together, and chemical affinity, what makes elements combine. These are all seen as vibratory manifestations operating on the physical plane.
Pretty standard physics concepts there.
Yes, but then it goes beyond. Energy B encompasses what they call nature's finer forces. These are forms of energy not yet fully discovered or harnessed by conventional science, but which are believed to be employed in phenomena like telekinesis or certain types of psychic activity.
Ah, the forces behind the unexplained, perhaps.
That's the implication. And finally, energy C consists of energy at such an incredibly high order of vibration that it resembles life itself. This is termed divine power energy, supposedly utilized by beings on the highest spiritual plane, beings considered gods compared to humans, operating at extraordinarily refined vibrational frequencies, capable of wielding forces beyond our comprehension.
Wow. Okay, that's the physical plane covered in its hermetic complexity. Moving up the scale now, we have the great mental plane. This sounds like it deals with all forms of living things, but maybe in a much broader sense than just what we typically consider mind or life.
It absolutely does. This plane is also conceptually divided into 7 minor mental planes, each with subplanes, representing a vast spectrum of consciousness or mind. And yes, it dramatically expands our understanding of what mind means, suggesting a continuum of consciousness throughout all existence, not just in humans and animals.
Okay, lay out these mental subplanes for us. This sounds fascinating.
It starts, perhaps controversially for some, with the mineral mind.
Mineral mind. Seriously, are you suggesting rocks and crystals have a mind?
Not in the sense of a human mind, obviously. Not self-aware consciousness as we know it. But yes, according to Hermetic philosophy, there are rudimentary entities or life principles animating minerals and chemicals, a very, very basic spark of life and responsiveness.
Like an inherent intelligence in matter itself.
Sort of. The Kybalion points out that even modern science, especially chemistry, observes that atoms exhibit loves and hates, attractions and repulsions behaviors that, at a fundamental level, differ perhaps only in degree, not kind, from rudimentary emotions or choices. It suggests a very low, almost imperceptible level of mind and life inherent even at this most fundamental level of material organization.
Okay, that's a mind-bending idea. What comes after mineral mind?
Next are the elemental minds, ABC. These are described as classes of unseen entities possessing intelligence somewhere between minerals and plants, then between plants and animals, and finally between animals and humans. These correspond to the elementals, nature spirits, devas, and similar beings found in many folklores and esoteric traditions.
Like the spirits of earth, air, fire, water.
Concepts like that fit here. They're seen as animating principles of nature, operating behind the scenes. Bulwer Lytton's novel Zanoni is referenced as exploring some of these ideas.
Okay, then we get to more familiar territory.
Yes. After elementals comes plant mind. This acknowledges that plants possess a definite form of life, a rudimentary mind, and even souls, reacting to their environment with a basic level of consciousness, seeking light, responding to stimuli.
We see that in time-lapse photography, plants moving and reacting.
Exactly. Then comes animal mind, covering the familiar animal life forms, demonstrating a much higher, more complex degree of mental activity, instinct, emotion, and learning.
And finally, human mind.
Right. The human mind plane, also with its 7 conceptual subdivisions, comprises our own mental manifestations from the most basic survival instincts shared with animals, up through reason, intellect, creativity, and the highest forms of abstract thought and spiritual intuition. The Kybalion interestingly notes that the average person today is typically operating predominantly within the 4th subdivision of the human mind.
Only the 4th. What about the higher levels?
The higher subdivisions, the 5th, 6th, and 7th, are associated with developing higher faculties, leading towards what might be termed Superman and Overman, consciousness states of greater awareness, wisdom, and mental mastery that are attainable through evolution and conscious effort. It implies that just as past races or forms of life evolve through the lower stages, we too are destined for higher evolution, unlocking greater mental and spiritual faculties.
A trajectory of potential. Okay, that covers the mental plane. Finally, we reach the great spiritual plane. This one must be truly beyond our current comprehension, almost ineffable.
It really is described that way, as the unthinkable heights of existence. The Kybalion states it's virtually impossible to describe it adequately in human language or conceptualize it fully with minds limited to our current lower human planes. The concepts, the experiences, the very nature of being there are supposedly so far removed from our current reality.
So what kind of beings exist on this plane?
This plane is said to comprise beings of vastly higher life beings we might vaguely conceptualize as angels, archangels, demigods, ascended masters, adepts, and even what some traditions simply call the gods themselves. Beings whose life, mind, and even form transcend ours beyond comprehension. They operate at such incredibly high vibrational frequencies
that they might not even have physical bodies as we know them.
Right. Some are described as being clothed in pure energy, appearing perhaps as beings of pure light or consciousness rather than having forms tied to gross matter.
So these are the unseen divinities and angelic helpers that appear in legends and religions across cultures. They're not just myths, but potentially real, conscious entities operating on a higher vibrational level.
That's precisely the Hermetic view. They are seen as actively participating in the cosmic process of evolution, sometimes guiding or inspiring developments on lower planes, which gives rise to many legends and religious beliefs throughout history. Not necessarily as objects of worship in the traditional sense, but perhaps as elder brethren or higher intelligences assisting the overall process.
Elder brethren, I like that term. But are they eternal? Or still part of the all's creation?
That's a crucial point. Even these highest beings are still considered mortal in the ultimate cosmic sense. They are creations within the all and thus subject to the universal laws, albeit operating at incredibly sophisticated levels we can barely imagine. They are considered elder brethren who, perhaps out of compassion or service to the cosmic plan, may delay their own final reabsorption by the all to help humanity and other life forms on their journey of evolution, guiding consciousness forward.
A sacrifice of sorts, delaying their own ultimate return. What about the potential misuse of such immense power, even at that high spiritual level? Is there a concept of fallen beings in Hermeticism?
Yes, the Kybalion addresses this directly. It warns that spiritual power, like all power, can be used for good or evil, for constructive or destructive ends. Those beings who misuse it, who turn their immense spiritual faculties towards selfish gain, control, or destructive purposes, are said to face a terrible fate.
What kind of fate?
It's described as a strong, rhythmic swing, dictated by the law of cause and effect and rhythm, back towards gross material existence. A fall from grace, essentially, often accompanied by the torture of having always with them a lingering memory of the heights from which they fell. This concept, of course, serves as the likely basis for many legends of fallen angels, banished deities, or struggles between light and dark forces found in various mythologies worldwide.
A powerful cautionary tale woven into the cosmic structure. It's a reminder that universal law applies to all, and every action has a corresponding consequence, even on the highest conceivable planes.
Exactly. Responsibility scales with power and awareness.
That's a sobering thought indeed. And it brings us perfectly to Principle 3, vibration, which truly underlies all of these planes and distinctions we've been discussing. It's the mechanism, isn't it?
It really is the fundamental mechanism of manifestation. This principle, encapsulated in the axiom "nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates," is presented as a universal law of motion. It was known to the Hermetists millennia ago, long before modern science developed the tools to observe atomic and subatomic motion. And it's now thoroughly corroborated by contemporary physics, at least on the physical level.
Right. We know matter is energy, EMC all. Everything is fundamentally vibrating.
Exactly. The principle posits that all differences between the various manifestations of universal power, whether it's dense matter, subtle energy, abstract mind, or pure spirit, are simply due to varying rates and modes of vibration. Everything is fundamentally the same substance. Mind, spirit, energy, depending on the level you look at, just vibrating differently.
So literally everything is vibrating, just at different speeds to create the diverse reality we perceive. Even something that looks completely solid and still, like this table, is actually buzzing with intense energy.
Absolutely. From the all itself, which is described as pure spirit vibrating at an infinite degree of intensity and rapid motion, so incredibly rapid that it appears perfectly still, almost at rest, much like a rapidly spinning wheel can look motionless.
The highest frequency looks like stillness.
Right. Down to the grossest form of matter, all is in constant perpetual vibration. Modern scientists have proven that all matter manifests heat vibrations, indicating internal motion. And particles, from the smallest known subatomic particles, corpuscles, as the Kybalion calls them, like electrons, right up to vast suns and galaxies, are in constant circular or orbital movement and internal vibration. It's a universe of ceaseless dynamic motion.
So even seemingly solid objects, or the chair you're sitting on right now, are just configurations of energy buzzing intensely, but at a rate or mode that our limited senses perceive as solid and static.
Precisely. Our senses only perceive a very narrow band of the total vibrational spectrum, and this principle extends to energy itself. Light, heat, magnetism, electricity, these are all known forms of vibratory motion, likely emanating from or transmitted through that ubiquitous ethereal substance we talked about.
And even forces like gravity.
You have seemingly fundamental forces like cohesion, that what holds things together, chemical affinity, what drives chemical reactions, and gravitation itself, though their exact mechanisms are still debated in science, are believed by Hermetists to ultimately be forms of vibratory energy, expressions of attraction and repulsion operating according to vibrational laws. The ethereal substance itself, that subtle linking medium between gross matter and energy, also has its own distinct, incredibly rapid rate of vibration.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, as the Kybalion uses that brilliant analogy, the spinning wheel, to illustrate these vibrational rates and how they manifest differently to our perception as the rate changes. Walk us through that again, because it beautifully encapsulates this whole spectrum of reality from matter to spirit.
Right, it's a fantastic thought experiment. Imagine a simple wheel, maybe made of iron, spinning very slowly. You see it clearly as a wheel, but you hear nothing. Now, you gradually increase its speed. As it spins faster, you first begin to hear a deep growl.
Low-frequency sound vibration.
Exactly. Increase the speed further, and the growl resolves into distinct musical notes, rising steadily in pitch as the speed increases higher frequency sound vibrations. Eventually, it spins so incredibly fast that the pitch goes beyond the range of human hearing, and you perceive silence once more, even though it's vibrating faster than ever in that range.
Okay, so we've gone through the sound spectrum. What happens next as we keep increasing the speed?
You continue to increase the speed dramatically. Now you start to perceive heat emanating from the rapidly spinning wheel. The vibration is now manifesting as thermal energy.
Higher frequency, manifesting as heat.
Right. Increase the speed further still, and the wheel begins to glow a dull red. Faster still, it gets brighter red, then orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and finally violet, passing through the entire visible light spectrum as the vibrational frequency increases.
From heat to light, infrared to visible light.
Precisely. Now increase the speed even more. The violet color disappears from human vision. The wheel might seem invisible again, but now it's emitting invisible rays like ultraviolet. Or at higher frequencies, perhaps X-rays, rays capable of affecting photographic plates.
Beyond the visible spectrum now?
Yes, and at even higher appropriate rates of vibration, phenomena like electricity and magnetism would be manifested or emitted from the wheel.
Okay, that covers a huge range already observed by science. But the Hermetic teaching extends this analogy even further, doesn't it? Into the structure of matter itself and beyond.
It does. And this is where it becomes truly profound and connects back to the planes. The teaching suggests that if you could keep increasing the vibration theoretically at unimaginably high speeds, the very molecules composing the wheel would disintegrate into their constituent atoms.
Breaking down the structure.
Yes. Increase the vibration further, and the atoms themselves would break down into the elementary particles, the corpuscles, like electrons, protons. Faster still, and even these fundamental particles would seem to disappear from physical manifestation altogether, perhaps resolving into pure ethereal substance.
Dissolving back into the underlying medium.
Right. And the Hermetic teaching continues, if these vibrations could be continuously increased even beyond that, the conceptual object, which ceased being an object long ago, would ascend through the various mental states and then the spiritual states, ultimately re-entering the all, absolute spirit from which it originally emanated.
Returning to the highest vibration, the source.
Exactly. The illustration powerfully demonstrates the idea of a continuous spectrum of vibration, where what we perceive as solid matter is just vibration at a certain low frequency or density, and mind and spirit are simply vibrations at much higher frequencies on the same ultimate scale.
This implies, quite powerfully then, that our thoughts and emotions, our mental states, also have specific vibrational rates. They aren't just abstract concepts.
Absolutely central to the Hermetic application. Every thought you think, every emotion you feel, every mental state you experience has its own corresponding rate and mode of vibration. And crucially, these mental vibrations can be thrown off from the individual and can affect others by induction.
Induction, like electrical induction.
Similar principle. One vibrating mind can induce similar vibrations in another. This is presented as the underlying mechanism behind phenomena like telepathy, remote influence, the power of suggestion, group mood, charisma, and other forms of mental influence. Your thoughts and feelings literally create a vibrational field around you.
So if we understand this, we can potentially control our own mental vibrations.
That's the key application. By understanding this principle of vibration and diligently applying your willpower, you can learn to polarize your mind at any degree you wish. This gives you incredible power to consciously control your moods, deliberately shift your mental states, and even influence the mental atmosphere around you by holding a specific vibration.
So you can literally learn to create specific vibrations at will. It sounds like a form of mental engineering or internal alchemy.
It is, fundamentally. This is the true power of mental transmutation that the Hermetists speak of. It's what allows masters, supposedly, to apparently set aside the laws of nature, as commonly understood. They don't actually defy the laws. They imply higher mental laws. By consciously changing the vibrations of objects or their own energy fields or influencing the minds of others through directed vibration, they can perform acts that seem miraculous to the uninitiated.
So miracles are just the application of higher, subtler laws of vibration.
That's the Hermetic explanation. It's simply advanced knowledge and application of universal principles that the average person is unaware of or hasn't mastered. As an old Hermetic writer famously put it, "He who understands the principle of vibration has grasped the scepter of power." It's about consciously directing your own internal energetic state and, by extension, influencing your reality.
That's incredibly empowering, moving from being a passive passenger swept along by vibrations to potentially becoming the conductor of your own inner orchestra. Now, let's move to Principle 4, Polarity. This seems tightly connected to vibration.
It is. Polarity explains the nature of the spectrum along which things vibrate. The principle is often stated as everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled.
Wow, that's a dense statement. Let's break it down. Everything is dual. Everything has poles.
It means that everything that exists has two sides, two aspects, two opposing poles. Think north and south, positive and negative. This principle is the key that explains many ancient paradoxes and validates those common sayings like, there are two sides to every story, or every cloud has a silver lining.
Okay, but the really radical part is opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. What does that mean? How can opposites be identical?
It means the difference between seemingly diametrically opposed things like hot and cold or love and hate is not a fundamental difference in kind, but really just a matter of degree along a single underlying spectrum or scale.
Okay, give us an example. Hot and cold.
Perfect example. Are heat and cold two entirely different things? Or are they merely varying degrees of the same underlying phenomenon, which we know from the principle of vibration is thermal energy or molecular motion?
Right, just more or less vibration.
Exactly. Where does heat stop and cold begin on a thermometer? There's no absolute dividing line. It's a continuous sliding scale. The terms hot and cold are relative. The same logic applies to light and darkness. Darkness is just the absence, or lower degree, of light, not a separate thing in itself.
Same for large and small.
Yes, purely relative terms. Large compared to what? Small compared to what? Same for hard and soft, noise and quiet, degrees of sound vibration, high and low, position or musical pitch, positive and negative, poles of energy. Even seemingly separate concepts like good and evil, from this perspective, are seen as different poles of the same universal ethical or moral spectrum, not inherently distinct warring forces, but different degrees of alignment with or deviation from a principle.
That's a challenging thought, especially with good and evil. But let's focus on the mental plane. This applies profoundly to our mental states as well, doesn't it? Which has huge implications for our inner lives and self-mastery.
Crucially, yes. This is where it becomes intensely practical. Consider love and hate. They appear to be radical opposites, irreconcilable enemies. Yet the Hermetic view is that they are simply two poles of the same emotional spectrum, the spectrum of affinity, or aversion perhaps.
With lots of shades in between.
Exactly. Many intermediate degrees exist, like, dislike, indifference, fondness, affection, resentment. Courage and fear follow the same rule. They are two ends of a single continuum related to response to perceived threat or challenge. The pairs of opposites exist everywhere in our mental and emotional landscape, not as distinct entities, but as extremes of a single unified quality or feeling.
And understanding this duality, this spectrum, is liberating. Why? Because it implies transformability.
Precisely. If opposites are just degrees of the same thing, it means you can theoretically move along that scale. This leads directly to the profound power of mental transmutation through polarization. You can consciously transmute one mental state into another of the same class by deliberately changing its polarity along that spectrum.
So you can turn fear into courage, or hate into love.
That's the potential offered by applying this principle. Love can, and sometimes does, turn to hate. Courage can falter into fear. But crucially, the reverse is also true. Fear can be transmuted into courage, hate into love, greed into generosity. However, you can't transmute love into, say, the color red, or courage into the concept of east, because they are not poles of the same underlying quality or class. The transmutation happens within the same spectrum.
This gives us a practical means to alter our inner experience, rather than just being passively subjected to our moods and emotions.
Exactly. It offers a method. So the practical Hermetic formula isn't to fight the negative state directly, head on, which often just energizes it.
Like trying not to think of a pink elephant.
Right. You just end up focusing on the very thing you want to avoid. Instead, the Kybalion teaches to destroy an undesirable rate of mental vibration, put into operation the principle of polarity, and concentrate upon the opposite pole to that which you desire to suppress. Kill out the undesirable by changing its polarity.
Focus on the positive pole you want to cultivate.
Yes. It's like the dark room analogy they use. You don't try to shovel out the darkness, you simply open the shutters and let in the light. Darkness vanishes when light appears. Similarly, you don't wrestle with fear. You actively cultivate and focus on courage. You don't battle procrastination by berating yourself. You focus your mental energy on initiating action, however small.
Shift your mental gaze.
Exactly. This conscious shift in polarity allows you to gain mastery over your moods, gradually remake your disposition, and fundamentally build character over time. It's presented as a core, practical technique of mental alchemy, in action, transmuting the lead of negative states into the gold of positive ones within yourself.
And this mental shift, this change in your own polarity, can it affect others too, through that process you called mental induction?
Yes, it can. Because as we learn from vibration, mental states are vibrational and contagious. The principle of polarity adds another layer. The positive pole of any given quality tends to dominate or influence the negative pole.
Like light overcoming darkness or courage overcoming fear.
In a sense, yes. Strong, stable, positive mental states can be communicated vibrationally to others, potentially helping to shift their polarity. This explains why being around a genuinely joyful, courageous, or peaceful person can lift your own spirits, or conversely, why being around a persistently negative or fearful person can seem to drain your energy or pull you down.
It's the basis for things like setting the tone or holding space.
And it also underpins phenomena sometimes described as mental treatments or intentional energetic influence for things like melancholy, anxiety, or fear. By holding a stable, positive vibration, the desired pole, one can potentially induce a similar resonant shift in another person's mental field. Understanding polarity empowers you not only to master your own mental states, but also to intelligently and ethically aid others by helping them shift their mental polarity in a positive direction, not through manipulation, but through the conscious emanation of a higher, more stable vibration.
Fascinating and very practical. Now, let's explore Principle V rhythm, which seems to describe the dynamic interplay, the constant movement between these poles we've just discussed.
Exactly. Polarity sets up the ends of the spectrum, and rhythm describes the inevitable swing between them. The axiom is, everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates.
The universal pendulum.
That's a great image for it. This principle describes the measured motion, the universal ebb and flow, the constant pattern of action and reaction, advance and retreat that is present in absolutely all phenomena. It acts as the dynamic force operating between the two poles established by the principle of polarity, ensuring a perpetual dance of movement, change, and cyclical return. Nothing stays static at one pole forever.
So it's this universal pendulum, constantly swinging, ensuring balance and movement across all phenomena. Where do we see this?
Absolutely everywhere, according to the Hermetists. From the grandest cosmic scales down to the most minute. In the cosmic dance, you have the creation and destruction of worlds, the expansion and contraction of universes, what some traditions call the outbreathing and inbreathing of Brahm. Suns are born, reach their zenith, decline, die, and their matter is eventually recycled into new stars in a vast cosmic rhythm.
And in nature around us.
Obvious examples. The cyclical rhythm of day and night, the turning of the seasons, summer inevitably yielding to winter, which then yields back to spring. The waxing and waning of the moon. The relentless ebb and flow of the ocean tides. Even at the microscopic level, particles like corpuscles, atoms, and molecules exhibit constant rhythmic movement, vibration, and pulsation. It's omnipresent, from macrocosm to microcosm.
And most importantly for us in our daily lives, it profoundly affects our own mental and emotional states, explaining those often bewildering swings of mood and energy we all experience.
Yes, this is where its practical impact is most immediately and sometimes painfully felt. The bewildering succession of moods, feelings, emotions in human mental states. Those swings from enthusiasm to depression, from courage to fear, from intense focus to mental fatigue, from joy to sorrow, are all described as direct manifestations of this universal principle of rhythm.
The emotional roller coaster.
Exactly. The Kybalion notes that most people are effectively slaves to these rhythmic swings, tossed about by their internal states and external circumstances like a boat without a rudder on a stormy sea. They ride the wave of enthusiasm or happiness and then inevitably crash into the trough of discouragement or sadness, feeling powerless to stop the cycle.
So how do Hermetic masters, those who understand these laws, deal with this seemingly inescapable rhythmic swing? They don't just stop the pendulum, do they? That seems impossible if it's a universal law.
They don't annul the principle itself, no. That would be like trying to stop the tides. Instead, they learn to use the law by understanding it. They learn to rise to the higher plane of consciousness, what is often called the higher self, the observer, the stable I am pole of their being.
Getting above the swing.
Precisely. This allows the pendulum of mood and circumstance to continue its swing on the unconscious lower plane of their mind, but without directly affecting their conscious awareness or stability. It's an active application of conscious will and awareness, a technique known as the law of neutralization.
So it's like rising above a churning river and letting it pass beneath you, rather than being swept away by the current.
That's a perfect analogy. Imagine standing on a high, stable platform as a pendulum swings back and forth below you. You recognize the swing, you observe it, but you are not pulled or buffeted by it because you are anchored at a higher point. By consciously polarizing at the desired positive pole, for instance, cultivating a stable state of inner peace, detachment, or resolve, and then mindfully refusing or denying the backward swing's power to dominate your conscious mind, one achieves a degree of poise and mental firmness.
So the swing might still happen on some level, but it doesn't knock you over.
Exactly. The underlying energy might still fluctuate, but your conscious awareness remains stable, centered. The will, operating from this higher plane, is seen as superior to the conscious manifestation of this principle. Understanding this gives you the profound key to mastering your own rhythmic swings, knowing yourself better, recognizing your patterns, and avoiding being constantly carried away by emotional tides or external events. It's about consciously choosing to step off the emotional roller coaster and onto the viewing platform.
That makes perfect sense. It's about becoming the impartial observer of the swing rather than the victim of it. And the principle of rhythm is also connected to something called the law of compensation, isn't it? Tied to that phrase, the measure of the swing.
Yes, this is a critical corollary to rhythm. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. This law states that the extent, the intensity, the duration of the swing in one direction determines the equivalent swing in the opposite direction. Nature always seeks balance through this rhythmic compensation.
Can you give examples?
On the physical plane, think of a simple clock pendulum. It swings in equal distance to the left as it does to the right. The seasons balance each other out over the course of the year. The heat of summer is balanced by the cold of winter. Ocean tides rise to a certain height and then ebb back an equivalent amount. Objects thrown upward have an equal distance and force, minus resistance, to traverse on their return downward. Nature is constantly seeking equilibrium through these rhythmic exchanges.
And this applies to our mental, emotional, and even perhaps our spiritual lives too, suggesting a kind of cosmic balance sheet operating behind the scenes.
Absolutely. The Kybalion applies this quite directly. It suggests, for instance, that the capacity for experiencing pleasure and the capacity for experiencing pain are balanced within each individual. Those individuals who are capable of experiencing intense joy and pleasure are often also susceptible to equally intense suffering and sorrow, and perhaps vice versa. The pendulum swings just as far in both directions for them.
To a wider range of experience overall.
Potentially, yes. And the Hermetists take this further, suggesting that experiences of pleasure in this life can sometimes be a rhythmic swing, acting as compensation for pain or suffering previously experienced either earlier in this life or critically in past incarnations.
Bringing in reincarnation as part of the balancing mechanism.
Yes. This interpretation sheds a different light on the age-old problem of pain and suffering, suggesting it might not be arbitrary or purely punitive, but often part of a larger cosmic rhythm, a compensatory balancing act working itself out across multiple lifetimes. Actions in one life set up the swing that compensates in another.
So in life, there's always this balancing act, this cosmic balance sheet, and you can't really have one extreme without eventually experiencing its compensatory opposite in some form.
That seems to be the implication. As the old saying, quoted in relation to this, goes, no one can keep his penny and have the bit of cake at the same time. Everything has its pleasant and unpleasant sides integrated within it. What one gains in one area might be balanced or paid for by what one loses or lacks in another.
Like the millionaire example.
Right. The millionaire's immense wealth and luxury, one pole, might come at the cost of his physical health, inner peace, or simple human connections, the compensatory swing to the other pole. Meanwhile, a laborer, though materially less fortunate, might possess robust health, a hearty appetite, and simple joys, his positive pole, that the millionaire, despite his riches, deeply envies. This law is seen as ever in operation, tirelessly striving to balance and counterbalance across all planes of existence, even extending across multiple lifetimes, ensuring a universal, albeit sometimes mysterious, equilibrium.
A profound concept of cosmic justice, really. Okay, now for Principle 6X, cause and effect. This is a concept many of us are familiar with: karma, consequences, etc. But the Hermetics seem to take it to an ultimate, all-pervasive, inescapable level.
They absolutely do. The axiom states, every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. This principle asserts, unequivocally and without exception, that law pervades the universe and absolutely nothing, no event, however small or seemingly random, happens by chance.
No room for randomness at all. Everything is caused.
According to this principle, yes. Chance is merely a term we use out of ignorance, a label for obscure causes we haven't perceived or can't trace. But the causes are always there, always operating within the system. There is no phenomenon, no event that stands independent of the universe's fundamental order and continuity. Everything is part of an unbroken chain.
An infinite chain of cause and effect stretching back and forward.
Precisely. Every single event, from the seemingly random fall of dice in a game to a stone dislodging from a mountainside and causing an avalanche, has an intricate, infallible chain of preceding causes, atmospheric conditions, geological stresses, the gambler's muscle twitch, etc., and will in turn become a cause for countless subsequent effects rippling outwards. The Kybalion puts it beautifully and succinctly. There is no great, there is no small, in the mind that causeth all. Every action, no matter how seemingly tiny, sets off potentially infinite ripples within the interconnected whole.
And this, of course, applies powerfully and directly to our personal lives, meaning every single thought we think, every action we take has definite consequences, intended or unintended.
Every thought you think, every act you perform, every word you utter has direct and indirect results. These personal causes fit seamlessly into the great intricate chain of universal cause and effect, affecting not only your own future, but potentially countless others, reverberating perhaps for ages to come. It highlights the profound interconnectedness of all things and underscores our inherent responsibility within that vast web of causation. We are not isolated islands. Our internal and external actions constantly contribute to the unfolding tapestry of reality for everyone.
Okay, if everything is caused and part of this chain, are we just pawns then? Are we simply puppets dancing on the strings of past causes, passively moved by external forces like heredity, environment, and our own inner programming? Or can we achieve some degree of mastery within this system?
This is exactly where the Hermetic concept of mastery comes into play, offering a way out of victimhood. The Kybalion observes that most people are indeed largely pawns on the chessboard of life. They are slaves to their heredity, to their surrounding environment, to the suggestions and opinions of others, and oft to the unconscious dictates of their own fears, desires, and ingrained habits. They are primarily reacting to effects, rather than consciously creating causes.
The effects rather than the causes.
Exactly. But Hermetic masters, or those striving towards mastery, are said to rise above this level of passive existence. By diligently applying the other principles, mastering their own moods through vibration and polarity, refining their characters, cultivating desired qualities, neutralizing the swing of rhythm, they learn to operate from a higher level of causation. They become movers in the game of life, consciously choosing their actions and thoughts, thereby becoming causes instead of effects. They're not simply reacting to the world, they're actively initiating chosen causes to shape their experience.
So they're not escaping the fundamental law of cause and effect itself, because nothing can, but they're learning to work with it from a higher vantage point, becoming conscious agents within the law.
Precisely. Masters don't escape higher causation, because nothing can escape the ultimate law originating from the all. Instead, they learn to fall in with the higher laws. By understanding the principles operating on the mental and spiritual planes, they can thereby gain leverage and dominate circumstances on the lower physical plane. They learn to use the principle instead of being its tools.
Playing the game skillfully rather than being played by it.
That's a good way to put it. As the Kybalion summarizes, they serve on the higher planes aligning with higher laws. They rule on the material plane influencing outcomes. This perspective also offers a resolution to the age-old philosophical debate of free will versus determinism. The Hermetists see these as opposing half-truths, two poles of a larger, more complex reality.
So we are both determined and free. How does that work?
Humanity is seen as both free and bound by necessity simultaneously, depending on the level of consciousness and awareness. The Kybalion states, the further the creation is from the center, the all, the more it is bound by lower laws, habit, instinct. The nearer the center it reaches through evolution and self-awareness, the nearer free is it. The key difference lies in the ability to will, to consciously choose and direct one's own will, rather than being passively driven by external stimuli or unconscious wants and desires that often masquerade as free choice. Developing this conscious will is what differentiates the master from the average person who is largely an automaton driven by unseen causes.
That's a profoundly empowering idea. It shifts us from potentially feeling like helpless victims of fate or programming towards becoming conscious creators within the system. By understanding these laws, we can learn to use law to overcome laws, rising to a higher plane of causation in our own lives.
Absolutely. It's ultimately about conscious choice, intelligent application of universal principles, and actively participating in shaping your destiny and character, rather than passively letting circumstances or ingrained patterns dictate your life's course. It's the crucial difference, as one analogy goes, between a skilled swimmer who understands the currents and uses them strategically to reach their destination, and a passive log that is merely carried wherever the current happens to take it. The wise person falls in with the law, and by understanding its movements, he operates it instead of being its blind slave.
Becoming the swimmer, not the log. Got it. And finally, that brings us to principle the seventh, gender. This one needs particularly careful explanation, you mentioned, as gender here means something far more expansive and universal than just biological sex.
Crucially, yes, this is perhaps the principle most easily misunderstood in modern times. The axiom is, gender isn't everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. The Kybalion explicitly and very emphatically warns readers against conflating this profound philosophical principle with what it calls base, pernicious, and degrading lustful theories, which sometimes arise concerning physical sex.
So this isn't primarily about sex at all?
Not primarily, no. Sex, as we understand it biologically, is merely one specific manifestation of this much broader, universal principle of gender, operating specifically on the organic, physical plane of life for the purpose of physical procreation. The term gender in the Hermetic context is derived from the Latin root meaning to beget, to procreate, to generate, to create, to produce. It refers to the innate, creative, generative, productive force and dynamic present in absolutely all things, on all planes.
The principle of active creation and generation itself. So how does this universal gender manifest even on the physical plane, for instance, at the atomic level? That seems entirely removed from anything we'd usually associate with gender.
It does seem remote, but modern science, interestingly, offers some corroboration, albeit using different terminology. Think about atomic structure. We now know atoms are formed by negatively charged corpuscles, electrons, clustering or orbiting around a positively charged center, the nucleus, containing protons.
Okay, positive and negative charges. How is that gender?
The Kybalion, written before the full complexities of atomic structure were known, points to this electrical polarity, and interestingly corrects what it sees as a scientific misnomer regarding the terms positive and negative. It argues that the so-called negative pole in electricity, like the cathode in a battery which emits electrons, is actually the active generative principle. It's the mother principle, giving birth to the electrons and initiating new forms of energy or phenomena.
So negative is actually the feminine, the generative source.
That's the Hermetic renaming. It calls this generative pole the feminine principle. Consequently, the positive pole is identified as the masculine principle. The feminine generates, the masculine projects or directs.
That flips some conventional scientific and even cultural notions about masculine active and feminine passive. Here, the feminine is the active generator.
Exactly. The teaching suggests the feminine corpuscle, electron, actively seeks union with a masculine one, protonucleus, to initiate the process of creating new forms, atoms, molecules. The feminine is the fertile ground, the matrix, the source of energy and substance. The masculine provides the stimulus, directs the energy according to a pattern or will, the intention perhaps, while the feminine performs the active creative work of bringing that potential into actual manifestation, nurturing it into being. Both are absolutely indispensable complementary forces required for any creation.
A universal dance of projection and reception, stimulus and generation.
Precisely. This dynamic interplay of masculine and feminine principles is seen everywhere on the physical plane, according to the Hermetists, in chemical affinity, atoms seeking to bond, in the atomic loves and hates that drive reactions, in forces of attraction and repulsion, cohesion, and they even propose it applies fundamentally to the law of gravitation itself, perhaps as a universal attraction between cosmic scale masculine and feminine energies. It's presented as the universal principle underlying all dynamic interaction and creation.
This sounds like a master key to understanding so much more than just physical creation. How does this principle of gender manifest on the mental plane, within our own minds? This seems incredibly relevant.
On the mental plane, this is where mental gender truly shines and becomes profoundly practical for self-understanding and mastery. The Kybalion points out that modern psychology's various dual mind theories, concepts like the objective versus subjective mind, the conscious versus subconscious mind, the voluntary versus involuntary mind, the active versus passive mind, all align perfectly with, and are explained by, the ancient Hermetic doctrine of mental gender. They were apparently talking about this fundamental duality within the human mind millennia ago.
So the masculine and feminine principles are operating right there within our own consciousness, creating our thoughts and experiences.
Yes, that's the core idea. The masculine principle within your mind, which the Kybalion often refers to symbolically as your I, corresponds to the objective, conscious, voluntary, active mind. It's the aspect that wills, that focuses attention, that directs mental energy, that initiates thought or action. It's the part that says, I will focus or I will decide.
The director or the projector?
Exactly. And the feminine principle, often referred to as your me, corresponds to the subjective, subconscious, or perhaps unconscious, involuntary, passive, in the sense of receptive mind. This aspect receives impressions from the outer world via the senses or from the masculine I, and then processes them, gestates them, and generates the resulting thoughts, concepts, ideas, emotions, and mental images. It is the mental womb, the fertile subconscious ground where seeds of thought planted either consciously by the I or unconsciously from external influences are nurtured and grow into mental realities, habits, and beliefs.
It sounds like, based on what you said earlier about most people being pawns, that most people are primarily operating from their me consciousness, often reacting rather than consciously directing.
That's the assessment in the Kybalion, yes. It suggests the majority of people largely operate from their receptive me consciousness, with their masculine principle of will remaining relatively inactive, largely unexercised or undirected consciously. This makes them highly susceptible to the thoughts, suggestions, beliefs, and wills projected by others, often making them, metaphorically, sheep-like creatures, easily swayed by advertising, political rhetoric, social trends, peer pressure, or dominant personalities. Their mental womb is constantly being impregnated by external seeds.
Whereas stronger individuals actively use their I.
Yes. Strong individuals, leaders, creators, those who seem to shape their own destiny, are said to consciously manifest and utilize their masculine principle of will. They actively choose the seed thoughts and intentions they wish to cultivate, deliberately implanting them into their own receptive me consciousness, their subconscious, for gestation and manifestation. And often, consciously or unconsciously, they project these strong thought forms outwards, influencing the minds of the masses, becoming leaders and trendsetters precisely because they have mastered this internal dynamic of mental gender.
And this understanding of mental gender, combined with the principle of vibration, is the key to understanding psychic phenomena like telepathy or suggestion.
Absolutely. The Kybalion explicitly states that this principle, combined with the principle of vibration, provides the master key to understanding the mechanics behind telepathy, thought transference, mental influence, mesmerism, suggestion, and hypnotism.
How does that work, based on this model?
In simple terms, the masculine principle of one mind, the sender or influencer, projects its focused vibratory energy, its willpower, its specific thought forms, towards the receptive feminine principle of another mind, the receiver. If the receiver's mind is receptive or passive, these thought seeds can be effectively implanted, influencing their thoughts, feelings, or even actions.
So it's a projection of mental energy from an active pole to a receptive one.
That's the model.
Yeah.
Grasping mental gender allows for an intelligent classification and study of these often mysterious psychological phenomena, moving them from the realm of the supernatural to the potentially understandable mechanics of mental energy exchange. More importantly, for personal application, it empowers you to become a conscious master of your own mental activity. You can learn to consciously direct your masculine will to choose what thoughts you cultivate in your feminine subconscious, rather than being merely a passive recipient of random external influences or uncontrolled internal chatter. You become the master of your own mental household.
This entire discussion, covering all 7 principles, really culminates in the practical application, the Hermetic axioms derived from these principles, and the true meaning of mental transmutation. This is where the profound philosophy meets tangible personal empowerment, isn't it?
This is absolutely where the rubber meets the road. This is the so what factor. The Kybalion places immense emphasis on the practical application, summed up in what it calls the law of use. It states it unequivocally and powerfully. The possession of knowledge, unless accompanied by manifestation and expression in action, is like the hoarding of precious metals, a vain and foolish thing. Knowledge, like wealth, is intended for use. The law of use is universal, and he who violates it suffers by reason of his conflict with natural forces.
In other words, armchair philosophy isn't the goal here. You have to do something with this knowledge.
Exactly. Simply knowing these principles intellectually, being able to recite them, isn't enough. It's considered useless, even detrimental, mental miserliness, if not actively applied in your life to transform your consciousness and experience. The knowledge must be lived.
Okay, so we need to actively apply this profound knowledge. Let's quickly recap some of the key axioms and practical applications for self-mastery that are derived directly from the principles we've discussed. First, for mastering your moods and emotional states, how do we use vibration?
The axiom is clear and direct. To change your mood or mental state, change your vibration. And how do you change your vibration? Remember, your will is the director of your mind. Your will directs your attention and sustained hating. Attention, focused with purpose, changes your mental vibration.
So focus determines vibration.
Yes. This means cultivating the art of attention is paramount. If you feel yourself slipping into a negative mood, a low vibration, consciously and deliberately shift your attention to something positive, uplifting, productive, or beautiful. Sustain that focus, even if it feels difficult at first. As you hold your attention on the higher vibration, your mental state will naturally begin to resonate with it, lifting your mood. It's not about suppressing the negative, but consciously choosing to tune into a different frequency through focused attention.
Okay, that's using vibration and will. Now, for killing out or transforming really undesirable states, like a persistent fear, a negative habit, or a limiting belief, which principle is key there?
Polarity is your primary tool here, the axiom states. To destroy an undesirable rate of mental vibration, put into operation the principle of polarity and concentrate upon the opposite pole to that which you desire to suppress. Kill out the undesirable by changing its polarity.
Don't fight the negative pole directly.
No, because that often reinforces it.
Yeah.
As we discussed, you don't fight the darkness, you bring in the light. Instead of battling fear, you actively identify, cultivate, and focus on its opposite pole, courage. Even if you start small, focusing on tiny acts of courage, instead of wrestling with laziness or inertia, you focus your attention and will on the feeling of energy, action, and the first step of the task, the opposite pole. By deliberately shifting your mental polarity towards the desired state, you effectively starve the undesirable state of energy and transmute the mental vibration itself, rather than engaging in a draining and often futile internal battle against it.
Transmute, not suppress. Got it. What about neutralizing those inevitable rhythmic swings, those ups and downs of energy and mood that seem to carry us away? How do we handle rhythm?
The technique here involves rising above the swing. Rhythm may be neutralized by an application of the art of polarization at a higher level of consciousness. The key is to learn to consciously elevate your sense of self, your point of awareness, to your higher self, that stable, observing, poised I am pole of your consciousness we talked about.
Becoming the observer on the platform.
Exactly. By identifying with that higher, calmer center, you allow the mental pendulum of moods, emotions, and even external circumstances to continue its natural swing on the lower, more automatic or unconscious plane, but without significantly disturbing or hijacking your conscious state. This is how masters are said to achieve poise and mental steadfastness. They observe the inevitable swing without being swept away by it. It requires conscious practice and the effort to elevate your point of awareness above the fray.
Maintaining equilibrium despite the flux. And finally, the ultimate goal, becoming a causer in your own life, rather than just remaining an effect of circumstances and conditioning. How do the principles enable that?
This draws on cause and effect, primarily, but integrates all the others. The axiom reminds us, nothing escapes the principle of cause and effect, but there are many planes of causation, and one may use the laws of the higher to overcome the laws of the lower. This is the essence of Hermetic mastery.
Using higher laws to influence lower outcomes.
Precisely. By consistently mastering your moods, vibration polarity, neutralizing the disruptive swings of rhythm rising above, and consciously directing your thoughts and actions from a higher plane of mental awareness, mental gender will, you effectively shift from being a passive effect or pawn in life's game to becoming an active causer or player. You begin to consciously create your own character, deliberately shape your environment through the causes you initiate, rather than simply reacting blindly to external forces or internal programming.
So you move from reacting to circumstances to creating circumstances.
Or at least creating your response to circumstances, which in turn influences future circumstances. Remember the analogy of the skilled swimmer versus the log. The wise person doesn't try to stop the river, the law, but falls in with the law, and by understanding its movements, he operates it instead of being its blind slave. By understanding these higher principles, you learn to navigate the currents of life effectively, becoming a conscious architect of your reality and destiny.
So the ultimate truth of Hermetic transmutation, this almost magical-sounding ability to transform oneself and one's experience, is truly described as a mental art. It rests entirely on that foundational principle. The universe itself is fundamentally mental.
Absolutely. That's the logical conclusion. Since the all is mind, the universe is mental, it logically follows, according to the Hermetists, that the universe can ultimately only be ruled, influenced, and transformed by mentality. Understanding and applying mental laws is the key.
And this provides the coherent, rational explanation from their perspective for all the so-called miracles, wonder-workings, psychic phenomena, and feats of mastery described throughout history.
Yes, they aren't seen as violations of natural law, but simply as the conscious, intelligent application of higher, subtler mental and vibrational laws, understood and utilized by those adepts or masters who have grasped these 7 principles understandingly. It's not supernatural magic in their view, but a deeper, more profound natural science, the science of consciousness and its power within a mental universe.
Wow, what a journey. We've traveled through the incredibly profound teachings presented in the Kybalion, exploring how these 7 Hermetic principles are offered as a true master key to understanding the universe, a universe that is presented as being fundamentally mental.
From the vast macrocosm of cosmic creation, right down to the microcosm of your own individual mind and experience, these principles aim to reveal an interconnected, orderly, lawful reality. A reality that is far more dynamic, fluid, and potentially responsive to your own consciousness than we often realize.
And hopefully, you now hold the core understanding, the central axiom, the all is mind, the universe is mental. Grasping this single foundational truth has the profound power, potentially, to redefine your entire understanding of control, influence, personal responsibility, and mastery.
It really shifts the perspective from being a somewhat passive observer or victim of circumstances to recognizing yourself as an active participant, perhaps even a co-creator, in the ongoing process of shaping your experience of reality through your thoughts, vibrations, and choices.
So for you, the listener, as you reflect on this deep dive today, take a moment. Think about a specific challenge or maybe a repetitive, frustrating pattern in your own life. Something that you once perhaps thought was just inevitable, just how things are for you.
Maybe it's a recurring negative mood you feel trapped by, a persistent difficulty with motivation or focus, a habitual emotional reaction to a certain type of person or event.
How might you now approach that challenge differently, armed with these principles? Could you apply the principle of polarity to consciously shift your focus towards the opposite desired state? Could you use the law of neutralization under rhythm to rise above the emotional swing instead of being drowned by it? Could you apply mental gender to consciously direct your will to plant different seeds in your subconscious?
What new possibilities, what new avenues for change and growth open up for you when you truly embrace the idea that you possess profound mental power? The power to transmute your inner reality, not by mere wishing or denial, but by understanding and intelligently applying these universal, albeit subtle, mental laws.
The journey of understanding, of course, doesn't end here. In fact, if these ideas resonate, this is really just the beginning of your deeper dive into personal and universal mastery.
Keep exploring these concepts. Perhaps read the Kybalion itself if you feel drawn to it. Most importantly, keep consciously applying these principles, even in small ways, to your daily life, and observe the results for yourself. Experiment. See what changes.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep diving deep